West Yorkshire and Sally, they've had an absolute battering from the weather over 2 successive weekends, and looks like it's going to be third time unlucky for them.
Yeah, the recovery has barely begun here, Isabel, and they face the threat of more floods again this weekend. This is the third consecutive weekend that the Calder Valley is on high alert for more flooding. Storm Ciara brought extraordinary scenes here 2 weeks ago. This main high street in Mytholmroyd was like a river. We walked into a local business. The water was above the bar. This Sainsbury's here is closed. All the businesses along the high street that we've seen pretty much are closed, completely flooded. In the Calder Valley area, 500 homes and 400 businesses were hit by those floods nearly 2 weeks ago. Then, of course, there was Storm Dennis that followed a week later. The army were deployed here to shore up flood defences, which I can point out to you along the River Calder here. You can see those walls. Those flood defences were built from around 2017 onwards, after horrendous floods that hit this area in 2015 on Boxing Day, many people may remember, but they're not yet finished. These sandbags here, we can show you, are part of the process of the building of these flood defences, and there's been a lot of criticism that they're not finished yet. Now you can see the water level of the River Calder has dropped. It's dropped significantly, but that is expected to rise again today and peak later on. This yellow weather warning that came into place about an hour ago is due to last until 6 a.m. Tomorrow morning. It's a yellow weather warning, which means that flooding is likely. There'll also be disruption to power and transport. Let me just introduce Councillor Scott Patient from Calderdale Council. Thanks for speaking to us. Tell us about the situation in the local community, the reaction. Your home was flooded last time. You escaped narrowly this time, but there have been a lot of people who've been hard hit.
Yeah, very much so. And we're still very much picking up the pieces from Storm Ciara from 2 weeks ago. And now we're here again. So people have those anxieties. They're really concerned about what happens next, because these barriers in these walls will only protect us so much.
Now, talking about these barriers, more than £30 million has been spent on flood defences in this town alone, yet it's still flooded. Yeah,
I mean, arguably the defences weren't completed, but there are definitely questions to be answered in terms of what went wrong. This is our third major flood in 7 years. It keeps happening, more frequent, more extreme. People want to know what's going to happen next, really. And actually the funding beyond these schemes to tackle what we're dealing with, which is climate change, realistically speaking. We need billions being put into our economy, because we can't bear this brunt alone as an authority.
Now, the last major floods were 2015, which is when this money was allocated for these flood defences. Sure. Why aren't they finished yet?
I think it's an uphill struggle getting those fundings initially. It's been a bit piecemeal how they've been looked at. It's reactive rather than proactive. And I think that's where people are at, really. We're looking at wanting to be recognised as a Tier 1 area, like the City of London has in terms of terrorism, because I think how vulnerable we are to the effects of climate and how we manage the uplands. We need a lot more funding, HS2 level style funding, kind of billions, not millions. We declared a climate emergency as a council, and we're actually living one here as well.
So what next? What do you want to see happening? It's just not just about money. What can be done with the environment to help with the drainage and the flood defences?
I mean, we're doing some brilliant stuff already in terms of natural flood management. We have some great local community groups, Slow the Flow and Tree Responsibility, who work with nature to slow that flow from the uplands down. That needs been quite tokenistic up to now. We also need to work with the landowners, and we need some wider catchment investment, like I say, beyond these walls. Walls are great and they do have a place to, they do have a part to play, but our towns and villages here in Calderdale can't survive long.
And just lastly, this third weekend now in a row, people.
Well, beyond what you see on the news when places flood, it's about what happens afterwards, and there is anxieties that go along with that, a lot of post-traumatic stress that's still here from 2015, so it's supporting those people, providing that reassurance.
She was very determined, but it was a plot that didn't go very far, because the two people she thought she was dealing with as potential bomb makers, she'd asked them to prepare bombs, turned out to be undercover police officers who were posing as a husband and wife bomb-making team. So as soon as it got to that point, she was confronted with officers and arrested. The plot basically was if somebody had supplied the bombs, she wanted to leave a bomb at a central London hotel, and a second one she would take to St Paul's Cathedral, where she planned to detonate it in a suicide attack. She was also convicted of disseminating terrorist propaganda. But as I say, lots of planning, but it fell apart as soon as she discovered she was dealing with undercover police officers.
And quite interestingly, because she is a convert to Islam, if her plot had been successful, she would have been the first. Tell me
the first female suicide bomber in Britain. But of course, it's easy to say that, but she was a long, long way from getting to that stage. Yes, she was a Muslim convert. She was born Michelle Ramsden, lived in West London, and at one point was the sole director of an MOT garage in West London, but got converted, got caught up in a plot, but it came to nothing. She's going to have to wait some time to hear her sentence. It was adjourned today after she pleaded guilty to these charges. She next appears for sentence on the 12th of May. The judge has asked for pre-sentence reports, that's normal, but pointedly perhaps asked the defence if it would submit a psychiatric report.
OK. All right, Martin, thanks very much indeed. Now, footage shown yesterday by Sky News could be used by investigators to link Russian aircraft to deliberate attacks on hospitals in northern Syria. Such attacks are a violation of the Geneva Convention and can lead to prosecutions for war crimes. Here's a reminder of what Alex and her team witnessed.